Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this session. This is the Scripps College Pre-Health Information Session. My name is Anna Marie Wood. I'm a Senior Assistant Director of Admission here at Scripps College, and I'm also a graduate from the class of 2013. Today, I'm joined by Susie Fang, a Director of Pre-Health Professions Advising at the Keck Science Center at Scripps College. So the purpose of this session is for you to learn more about pre-health opportunities at Scripps. As some of you may know, pre-health, or we also say pre-med, is not a major at Scripps, but rather a track that students follow. And students who are pre-health will work with Susie on preparing for and understanding how to choose a health profession. So before I turn this over to you, Susie, I just want to highlight a few things. First, Susie will present, and then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. Throughout the session, though, you can ask your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. This session should last approximately 30 to 45 minutes, and we will be recording the presentation. So in case you have to leave or you want to rewatch parts of it, we will post this recording on our YouTube channel. So I will now turn it over to you, Susie. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna Marie. So hi, everyone. My name is Susie. Let's go through what pre-health advising is at Keck. So like Anna Marie said, pre-health is a track. So I am supplemental to the major advisor. So the major advisor will help tell you what courses you'll need to graduate and to fulfill your major requirements. And then you'll meet with me, and then we'll go over any prerequisites for whichever graduate health program that you are looking for. I prepare you to be a competitive applicant, depending on the program that you're looking into. And I have about 500 pre-health students. And this is across all three colleges, Claremont, McKenna, Pitzer, and Scripps. About 45% are from Scripps College. So almost half are from Scripps. 80% are pre-medical, and then 20% are the various other health professions, so such as pre-vet, pre-dental, pre-nursing. Here's a couple of different tracks that we have. The most popular is, of course, pre-med. Second, I would say would be pre-vet, pre-nursing, pre-dental, and then pre-PA. However, if you're interested in any of the others, for example, pre-pharmacy or podiatry, it doesn't mean that you can't come to Scripps. I am still able to help you. It's just that we just don't have that many people. But you can still, I'll still help you be a competitive applicant. So pre-health advising, what does that include? So I do one-on-one advising, and I help with curriculum planning so we could make a four-year plan. I'll also help you during the application process. So depending on the program, sometimes it can take up to a year. So I will help you go through that, figure out when you're going to take your standardized tests, letters of recommendation, experiences, everything that you need to do. I also am able to look over personal statements. I do mock interviews. We do have clinical research and volunteer programs and opportunities, but I do want to make a special note about that. So at my office, I will provide any opportunities that come across my way, and I'll post that in my newsletter or even on my portal website. However, I don't have a specific list of, let's say, physicians to shadow in the area or programs that students can apply to. My job is mainly to advise, and so I will help you look for these types of opportunities, but because our students are from all over the country and even sometimes the world, I'm just not able to have a specific list available. So we also have pre-health student clubs and organizations. We have quite a few. One of our most popular is the EMT Club, which also has an EMS service. So the EMS service was supposed to start about 2 weeks after the pandemic started, or after we were all sent home. So everything was set up. It took about 2 years to get it to, all the legal stuff and all the fun stuff that needs to happen. And we had hired students that had EMT licenses, and then the pandemic happened. So we're hoping that when we are back on campus, we can continue the EMS service. So this would have been a really great opportunity for students on campus to get that clinical experience. So they would be the responders who would come out to any of the students on campus who would need help before the paramedics got there. We also have a pre-health club. We have MedLife, pre-vet, and then pre-dental. And then I also offer personal support. I have workshops and events that are scheduled throughout the year. And then I have pre-health student ambassadors These are about 8 to 10 students that are juniors and sophomores that represent the different colleges and also the different tracks. So I have pre-med, pre-nursing, pre-PA, et cetera. And these students are here just to help, prospective students, freshmen, sophomore, anyone. If you have questions about what it's like to be a pre-med, let's say at Keck or at Scripps, I'm happy to connect you to any of my ambassadors. And then I also have my pre-health portal. So this is a separate website from the Keck Science pre-health website that I'm sure many of you have looked at. So on this one is where I post my events, announcements, resources, any PowerPoint presentations, recordings that I have, and then any opportunities. And then I also have a weekly newsletter that I send out every Friday, and all of that information is also in the portal. So a couple of sample workshops and events that I host. So at the beginning of every year, I'll always have a introduction to pre-health basics, and this is for freshmen and transfer students, and that's where I go over everything. What it means to be pre-health, how to be a competitive candidate, what resources we have at Keck, what's needed. And then I also have a gaining pre-health experience where I talk about all the different volunteer and community service opportunities around the Claremont area and basically what to look for. For junior and senior year, I have a little bit more workshops for you just because this is around the time where you're going to be applying. So I'll have an applicant information session, gap year, what it's like, what you can do, the application services, deciding where to apply, and then mock interview prep. And then a couple of special programs that I did pre-COVID was we had a future clinic. We had a career track to Rancho Los Amigos Rehabilitation Center, and that was really great because we were able to speak to occupational therapists, physician assistants, and physicians and talk to them about what their day-to-day life is like at work. And then I have some physician talks and then alumni talks. And then there's always health profession programs that will come do information sessions. And then student panels were highly requested last year. So now I'm doing a ton of student panels so that all the students can hear either from Keck alum or upperclassmen about their experiences. So how to be a competitive applicant. There are 5 things that I always talk to students about. So academics is always number one. GPA can really open a lot of doors for you when you're applying to programs. So I'm always focused on academics. And then after that, it's research, clinical opportunities, community services, or community service and leadership. So for each of these, I always try to make sure the students have a really good foundation in all of them. It's not just checking off a box. So one semester doing what they research and the next semester doing clinical experiences and then just checking it off. It really needs to be consistent. And so what I do is I will help students kind of plan this out in the 4 years. Of course, students will not be doing all 5 of these in one semester, but we'll kind of spread it out so that we're able to really get a very competitive application so that when it is time to apply, they have everything that they need and they're very well-rounded. So the fun part, statistics. So I have approximately 25 to 60 students that will apply per year to a graduate health program, and this is across all 3 campuses. So if you remember earlier, I have about 500 pre-health students. So that's about 100-ish per year, and I only get about 25 to 60 who will actually apply. 25% of them have already graduated. 25% are juniors, so they're taking no gap year. So they're planning to go straight into a graduate health program after graduating. And then 50% are seniors, so they'll be taking 1 gap year. Scripps has about a 70 to 80% acceptance rate, and this depends on the year. The national averages, as you can see right here, for MD schools is 40%, DO 30%. Vet and dental are very competitive, and they're around 10%. Our average GPA of our applicants for these programs is about a 3.7 GPA. And then advising is open to all students, current and alum. So even if you graduate and let's say 5 years later, you decide, I want to apply to med school, you can call me or anyone who is in my position and we are able to help you just the same as if you were a current student. So we also have something called the Keck Committee Letter. And this is a letter that's authored by the Pre-Health Committee and myself, the advisor. And then it's an evaluation and advocacy on your behalf, and it highlights your background, accomplishments, challenges, and outlines all of your overall preparation for pursuing a career in either medicine or dental. This is only accepted by medical and dental programs, which is why we only write it for these two. This is available up to 2 years after graduating. So, you know, this is not very common in West Coast schools. It's more common on East Coast schools, and it's not required for an application, but it's just something that we offer. And it's a nice little, basically like a nice little cover letter on top of about 5 letters of recommendations that the students will collect. There are certain requirements for the Keck committee letter. For example, there's a GPA requirement, and there are certain events and appointments that have to be made, and there's a few deadlines. And so this is almost a full year process to do the Keck committee letter. It starts in September and it ends in June. So this current application cycle, I'm sure all of you know, was very different. There was a huge increase in applications across almost all the health professions. And so for this cycle, we had about 38 applicants. 17 were from Scripps, 28 applied with a committee letter, and 10 without. The 10 without either had already surpassed the 2 years, so they were not able to get the committee letter, or they had joined late in the cycle, and so the process had already, been complete, and so they weren't able to get one. This is for MD and DO programs. 92% of these students had at least one interview. So I always say that my job is to make sure that I help students have the best competitive, well-rounded application to get you that interview. Once you get that interview, I help with mock interview prep, but after that, it's up to the student. So my job is to at least get you to the interview process, because at that point, that's really all that I can help you do with the application and everything like that. So we had a very high rate, which is great. And then acceptances so far, and this is for MD schools only. So as you can see to the left, these are the schools that have already accepted our Scripps students. And then on the right are some DO schools that have already accepted our students. If you don't see a school that you are interested in that last slide, here are a couple of the other schools that our students have been accepted to in the past. So you'll see there's a ton of different ones, a lot of state schools, some private schools. And we also have MD, PhD programs as well that our students will apply to. And then for other health professions, these are the schools that our students also get into. So dental, vet, physical therapy, nursing, etc. And then if anyone has any questions. Let's see.
Great. Thank you so much, Susie. That was super informative.
Oh, of course.
So students and families on the call, if you are interested in asking Susie some questions now, feel free to type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and I'll pose those questions to Susie. But in the meantime, Susie, I know that this, thank you again for the presentation. I learned every year you do this, I learned so much. Could you clarify, I know you talked about timeline, you work with juniors, seniors, but also students who have already graduated. How does a student know when they should apply to the graduate health programs, or how does that journey look for them in their time at Scripps?
So you mean knowing what year they should apply?
Yeah. Is that just kind of like a personal choice, or how does students?
Yeah, kind of. So some students will come straight in to college and they're like, I'm not taking gap year. I'm going straight in. Because at that point, you need to dedicate your first 3 years of college to strictly, let's say, pre-med experiences. It is unfortunately difficult to study abroad, but not impossible. But you have to be very focused. Some students will take 1 gap year because they want to be able to, let's say, study abroad, or they play a sport, or they want to take more classes and kind of spread it out. It is always a little better and more competitive to take these gap years because you get those extra years of experience. So if you apply, let's say at the end of junior year, which is when med school apps open in June, as opposed to, let's say, senior year or 1 year after, you have, a full year of grades your senior year that will be included. You have your thesis, you have more experience that you may have done. And then of course, if you take more than 1 year gap year, you have a full year or more where you can just get a ton of different experiences that will definitely make you more competitive. So it really depends.
Yeah, it's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now we have a lot of questions. Perfect.
Yay.
So the first one, I'm sure that a lot of liberal arts colleges get this question, but the question is, I heard that Scripps only offers a Bachelor of Arts, a BA degree. Does that affect the admissions to medical school in any way, especially since medical school is obviously, in STEM? So could you talk about that?
Yeah, no, it does not affect at all. I have never received a call or email or anything. Based on our stats, our students do pretty well getting into med school, and so I would say no. And even though med school is STEM, you'll be taking your courses at the Keck Science Department. And so what they're looking at is to know that you can do well in those courses. So your major really doesn't matter as much. The main focus at the beginning is going to be your grades, your courses, how well you do in sciences, and then your standardized tests.
Great, thanks, Susie. The next question is, on average, how many medical schools do pre-med students apply to?
About 15 to 20 is what I recommend. Now, I do have some students who apply to 5 and some who apply to 40. But typically I'll recommend about 15 to 20 is a good number, because you can kind of mix it up with reach schools, schools that you meet, and then ones that you're above. And for other programs, let's say for nursing, pharmacy, nursing, etc., that one isn't as much. That can be 5 to 10 because it's not as competitive, but you still want a pretty good range of schools.
Great. And the next question is about the MCATs. When do you best advise taking the MCATs?
So the MCAT needs to be done at a certain time, because you have to have completed all of your courses, almost all of the science courses. And so you cannot take it without, biochem, OChem physics, and biochemistry. So you have to wait until all of that's done, and then you can take it. However, you also need to take it and get your score back before you apply, ideally. The application opens in June and it's rolling, so you want to apply as soon as possible. So depending on if you're taking a gap year or not, if you are not taking a gap year, it's best to take it the summer after sophomore year if you're able to take biochemistry, or it'd have to be sometime during junior year. If you do take a gap year, then it would be after junior year during that summer, going on to senior, or sometime during senior year. I don't recommend taking it the second semester of senior year because there's a lot going on. There's thesis, senioritis, you don't want to be there. And then you're studying for the MCAT. So that's my least favorite time to tell students to take it, but sometimes you just have to. So
yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah. And the next question is about, I think, number of students who are applying to medical school. So the question is, if the number of pre-health students is 500, so for example, 100 to 125 per grade, what are some reasons why the number of medical school applicants ranges from 26 to 60?
Yeah, good question. So it depends. Some students just decide that they want to go into research. Some just change their mind. Some will take the science courses and be like, "Ooh, you know what? This isn't for me. I don't want to do this anymore." Truthfully, once they kind of don't do pre-health, they don't really tell me. They just kind of disappear. So I would just say that, when they start, they're exploring everything, right? Being at Scripps, you have all these different options. And I think that they just come in and find something else that they're interested in. I don't think that it's really, they don't want to, but they just find something else. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I know we've had some students who are like, I came in pre-med, but then I took this religious studies class, and now I want to get a PhD in that. So, things happen.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is, I've heard that majoring in something other than STEM can be more intriguing at times to medical schools and make you look more like a well-rounded applicant. What are your thoughts on that? That's a good question.
Yeah, so this is a very common question. I always tell students, major in something that you want to major in. Don't just pick English or French just to look better. It's better if you just major in biology and have that 4.0 in your science courses. Because by the time they look at your major, first they're going to look at your GPA regardless. And so if you're interested in art and you come in and you want to major in that, then yes. But I don't tell students to pick something just to look better, because when you're talking about it during the interview, they can tell if you're really passionate about it and if you really wanted to major in that, or if you're just kind of doing it. So it's okay to major in bio or chem or any of the other science majors that you hear is very common, because you're going to have so many other experiences besides that, that it won't even matter what you majored in. So even if you are bio, which is the most common, you have all these other things. You have a thesis that most people at undergrad schools don't even do. You have all these experiences. So I wouldn't worry about that. Major in whichever one you want to.
I feel like that's the best piece of advice. Like, you don't want to be stuck in a major that you hate, because that's not going to set you up for success anywhere.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And then I just wanted to follow up on something that you said about thesis. I know that, Scripps requires thesis, as a graduation requirement for our seniors. And that sounds common that, every college does that. Can you talk a little bit more about thesis and pre-health students and how that sets them up for success?
Anna Marie, I don't know. The faculty does that. I know that there is a 1 semester or 2 semester thesis. You can do research over the summer. So if you do find, let's say, a research opportunity near home, let's say at City of Hope Cancer Research, at their center, you can actually use that research and use it for your thesis and bring it back. So that's kind of cool. So you can do a summer fall thesis or a fall spring thesis. You can also do a 1 semester thesis, which is the library research. So you're looking at already published things. But I do know that most other schools don't do it, because I didn't do a thesis and I went to a UC. So it is still really good, because you get that research experience. So it's additional research experience that a lot of other applicants probably will not have. So it just kind of adds on top of it.
Yeah, that's good to know. Letting me ask that rogue question.
I know.
There's a couple of questions about the MCAT. So the first one is, what is the average MCAT for Scripps students?
It is a 511.
And if I take the MCAT more than once, do medical schools see all of the scores for the MCAT, or just the one I choose to send?
Oh, good question. They see everything. So they will see all of it. So I always recommend, do not plan to take it twice, and if you do plan to take it twice, make sure there's a pretty significant time between that. So I'll have students take it, let's say in September, and then it's not offered again until January. So then they'll say, well, I'm going to take it in September so that I can take it again in January, just in case. But there's not a lot of time in between for you to really grasp what you need to improve on. A lot of times students are a little bit traumatized by the first time, so they don't want to study the first month, but you do need at least 6 months to a year. So when I talk to students, I tell them, don't plan to take it twice. You don't want to have to take it twice. It's not a fun exam. It's 8 hours, almost 3 months of studying. Plan to take it once and that's it. But if you do have to take it twice, that's okay. But yes, they see everything, so they'll know.
I had no idea. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
And that's different than I think what, exams our students are used to in high school taking, which different.
Oh, yes. It's pretty stressful. They check everything. They scan. You have to ask to go to the restroom. It's pretty, yes. Can you imagine how many people have cheated on the MCAT for this to happen? There's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Serious endeavor. And then the next question, I don't actually know if either one of us will have the answer to, but because you have an average GPA of pre-health students at Scripps, and this question is, what's the average GPA of Scripps students in general? I don't know.
No, the only average GPA I can give you is just the applicants, which is about a 3.7. Yeah.
So I do not know the answer to that, but I think, Scripps is a place that, I think students are attracted to Scripps because they love learning. And so our students are, love being in the classroom, but yeah, I don't know average GPA or grades or anything like that for current Scripps students. And then our next question is, can you talk a bit more about research at Keck, if you can, Susie, in comparison to a larger research institution like a UC, a University of California? What are the research opportunities like at Scripps?
Yes, so I'm gonna talk about pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, there is quite a bit of research opportunities on campus. So what used to happen is that students could just ask their professor, or whichever professor that was doing research that you're interested in, and you can ask them if you could volunteer in their lab. If they didn't have space, let's say this spring, then you can ask to volunteer in the summer or the fall. And typically most students, if not all, will get something if you ask. It may not be right now, but it will probably be next semester. Now, in terms of it being compared to a UC, UCs do have more funding, right? And so they probably have more options. Keck, I would say, is probably limited to what they're doing research on, right? Because we have about 60 to 70, I believe, faculty members, and most of them do research. So as long as you're interested in what they're doing, then this is going to be great. But there are a couple of things that, we just don't have. And so that's where the UCs could help. But in terms of the opportunities, there should be enough opportunities. Now, because of COVID and how everything was canceled last summer, this current summer research is very, very rare, because students from last summer are trying to get something, current students are trying to get something, and then things are getting canceled. So right now it is not easy to get research, but during normal times it was perfectly fine and easy to get.
Great, thank you, Susie. And so that's the end of our questions. Students and families on the panel, if you have any other questions, type them into the Q&A. And while we're waiting for that, I just have another follow-up question, Susie. You talked about study abroad. Can you talk a little bit more about if a student, of course, I know that this year is a year that students were not able to go abroad, but generally speaking, if a student wants to go abroad and they're pre-health, what does that look like for their time at Scripps?
Yeah, so if they want to study abroad, which I always encourage, because I always believe that students should take advantage of, all that Scripps has to offer. So if you are not on a timeline on when you want to go to, let's say, med school, then I say, yes, study abroad, which may give you about a gap year. So you may not be able to apply until after senior year, which is perfectly fine. Things just get kind of spread out. I would say about 50% of pre-health students will study abroad. It's fun. The courses or the grades that you do abroad will still be seen by medical schools or any of the schools. I always say still do well, but you will not take any prerequisite courses while you're out there, because it's just too difficult to get those abroad courses approved by medical schools. And so students just, have fun over there and take classes that you want to take and any Scripps GEs. But I always encourage study abroad, especially if students want to. But it is a little bit helpful, I would say, for medical school applications, because you're in a different culture. You get to see what it's like. We do have a few that are specific or have specific medical experiences. So then you can take a look at that. But if not, and you just wanted to, let's say, go to Italy just because you want to, then that's great too. But yeah, it's a good option if you want to.
And our next question is, we have a few more. Let's see. On average, how many students join a medical school every year? So I guess how many students go to medical school each year?
Do you mean like Scripps? Well, let's see. In general, so let me think. Let me look this up real quick. Sorry, pause.
I think it is about Scripps. How many Scripps students go to medical school every year?
Yes, I can tell you. Here, I'll tell you last year's stats. That might be easier because that's done. Last year we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's about at least 10, I would say, that go to medical school. And again, we have about maybe 12. We had 12 that applied, so 2 unfortunately didn't make it in, but we get about 10, I would say.
And then there's a question that says, at what point should students decide to go on the pre-med or pre-vet track if they're still deciding? So we have students who are looking at a couple different tracks.
Yeah. So once you start on campus, first year fall, I would say take chemistry. Just take chemistry, see how you like it. And if you like it, then continue with the different sciences and then explore, whether that's summer or winter break or during the school year, shadow a vet, shadow a physician. That's probably the best way. Volunteer at a hospital because you want to be in that environment. And so really, truthfully, you can choose at any time. You just might take a couple more years. So let's say if you decided senior year, like, hey, I want to be pre-med, but I'm an English major, that's fine. Then we would talk about post-bac programs or things that you could do after you graduate. So most students will decide around first or second freshman or sophomore year, typically. And then every once in a while, I'll get a junior and sometimes a senior, but you want to at least have those science courses or prereqs. So what I'll tell students, if they still haven't decided what they want to do, at least take the most common prerequisite courses so that when you're done with college, at least you have those done, and then you can maybe add a couple more if needed. So that would be helpful.
Good to know. The next question is going back to research. So are the research opportunities abroad through Scripps?
I don't know. Anna Marie, are there research opportunities?
I know. I mean, generally speaking, there's, I mean, but this is for STEM, but also not STEM students with research at Scripps. There's like informal ways where you're, just working with a professor on something. There's formal ways where maybe you're applying for grants, either like summer-long research programs or pre-thesis research funds, things like that. I mean, inherently, students are going to be dabbling in some kind of research because everyone does thesis. So it's also really important when we talk about research at Scripps. And then I'm sure that there are, I'm trying to think of specific examples, but I'm sure there are students who have gone abroad to do research in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe there are, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. And I know that there's study abroad programs where you're doing research through the program, so therefore you're going abroad through Scripps, and then there's research through that. So it's kind of a multi-layered answer.
Yes. Also, I'm going to share my screen again, so if anyone wants to take a photo of the schools, feel free. I think that was one of the questions.
Yes, our next question was, can you screen share the slide of the medical schools that Scripps students have gone into again?
This is most of them. There might have been like a handful that didn't fit on the slide, but this is most of them. If there's a specific school that you're looking for and it's not on here, you can always email me.
And then, Susie, while you have this up, the next question is about tutoring. So I'm also happy to answer this question as well, but do you know if there are any tutoring programs at Scripps for science?
At Keck Science Department, I know that there are tutors for specific courses. So there are tutors assigned to, let's say, the chem course, bio, chem, and physics. And I believe it's just for the more popular courses or more general courses. So it's not the upper division ones. So we do have tutors at Keck for those science courses. Now, what does Scripps offer, Anna Marie?
Yeah, there's a variety of academic services through Scripps. Whether we're looking at STEM or outside of STEM, there's tutoring, peer tutoring. There's also, of course, faculty are always available for office hours this week.
Yes.
There's also other variety of academic services. For example, there's academic coaching, which isn't necessarily tutoring, but more, I like to say, like consulting. So like if you just kind of want to talk over your study habits or the way that you're, managing your time throughout the week with homework, not necessarily tutoring on a specific content or subject, but just to, be a better student or to, change any habits that you may have. There's also that as well through Scripps, which I wish I had taken advantage of when I was a student at Scripps. So tutoring and then a variety of other things.
Yeah.
And then the next question, Susie, is about liberal arts. And I believe in the past you've done a session for us about pre-health, not just at Scripps, but generally about liberal arts. And So the next question is about that, but do you think liberal arts students have some kind of leg up when it comes to being pre-med and applying to medical schools?
Mm, I don't know if there's like a leg up. I would say liberal arts students get to take a variety of courses that, you know, give you a bit more time to explore. A good thing about liberal arts schools, or at least Scripps, is that it's small, so that I am able to really give students a lot of attention and really help them to make their application competitive. Bigger schools sometimes aren't able to do that. For example, I know one of my colleagues that's at a public institution. There's 2 advisors and there's like 20,000 pre-health students. And so luckily there's one of me and about 500, so it's a little bit better. But I don't know if I would say that, coming to a liberal arts school is always going to be great, but it's also kind of like a whole package. So also with like the 70 to 80% of students acceptance rate that Scripps has, coming to Scripps or coming to a liberal arts school isn't going to give you a 70 to 80% chance of getting into medical school. It's really everything that you're doing. So if you do come and take advantage of everything that a liberal arts school has to offer, then yes, it could be very helpful because you'll have other experiences that some students or some other applicants may not have. So yeah. Do you have anything to add, Anna Marie?
Yeah, I think when I talk about this, I always go back to just really how small Scripps is and how like the personal attention that you can get at a liberal arts college. So what was that number that you said at the other ratio at a large public school?
Oh, they had like 20,000 pre-health students. It was crazy.
Yeah, so I just like, I think obviously there's, different pros and cons to big school and small school. And I know a lot of students on this call are probably choosing between or thinking about Scripps and a large school. I know I was. And so for me, it always comes down to, well, it's kind of hard to get lost in the shuffle of things when you're at a small place, right? Like actually get to know you and you're picking up on them. And there's just someone who's there to check in and be like, okay, so what are you doing this summer? And things like that. So I just feel like that aspect of being a big fish in a small pond and having the supportive community of a place like Scripps is what makes pre-health here so beneficial.
Yeah. And I will say, with Scripps or liberal arts college compared to a big state school, good thing about Scripps is that the small class sizes. So the letters of rec that you need for any of these programs is a bit easier to get because your professors actually know who you are. Where at a big state school, it can be a little bit difficult because sometimes you're working with the TAs, and so you kind of have to like fight your way through the other 200, 300 students that might be in the class. But it's not impossible. So, you are able to get more letters of rec, a little bit easier, get to know them. I am here to help. Some schools don't have pre-health advising, so that's something to keep in mind, but they do have other resources that can help. So there's a lot of good things that we have that will make it a little easier.
Yeah, I think my intro biology at Scripps was 35 people. And I remember thinking, wow, this is big because my other classes at Scripps were like 10 or 15. But then you're talking to a friend at a large university, they were like, oh, there's 350 people in intro biology. I was like, oh, I'm at 35.
Yes. I used to have classes in a movie theater because there were so many students.
Oh, wow.
It was like huge. It was a huge movie theater. They ran out of space, obviously. But yeah, there's a lot of students.
So yeah, I think when I talk about the liberal arts, it focused a lot on that aspect of being small. And then I think the other thing, and my roommate at Scripps, who ended up going to I forget what type of nursing program she did after Scripps, but just having a strong foundation in like critical thinking, reading and writing, and having done thesis, she just felt like set her up for success in graduate school. And so I think that's also something too that I talk about with Scripps students is that strong focus on our humanities curriculum and secondary learning. You're learning all these tangible skills, soft skills, not just things really in STEM, but also outside of STEM.
Yeah. Oh, I think I can stop sharing now.
Yeah, I think we ended up. All All right. Well, that's the end of our questions. So I'll wait like 30 seconds. And students, families, if you have any other questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A box. While we're waiting, I'll also put in the chat our link to our admitted student webpage so you can find out more and register for more upcoming events that we have. We have a study abroad panel next week. We have a couple of current student panels. And then Susie, if you want to include any information in the chat box too, feel free to do that.
Yes, I'll include my email in case anyone has questions. If anyone wants to talk to any pre-med students that are at Scripps, you can contact me and I can give you contact information if that's something you're interested in.
Thank you for offering that. That's
Yeah. Do you have that out of the admissions office?
Do I have what?
Do you do that out of the admissions office? Like connect them?
We have our current students who work in our office, but then if it's something a little bit more niche or outside of that, then we should try to find someone who knows someone or contact a professor.
Oh.
So I appreciate that. Thank you, Susie.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Like I said, we were recording the session, so if you missed anything, it will be posted on our YouTube page in a few days. And please reach out to Susie if you have any more questions about pre-health advising. And please check out the admitted student webpage for more Scripps events this month. So thank you all.